Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Finance Audit Tendering and Administration Committee meeting January 8th, 2025, 12:30 p.m. to order. Order of business, number one, called order. Good. Number two, declarations of conflict of interest. None. Okay, number three, approval of agenda.
New business, Mr. Chair. Just under new business, I want to get an update on the purchase of the 4 electric buses that were approved by council at our November 12th meeting. And with our Director of Finance here, I'd like to get a clarification on the delay or the pressing the pause button on the public transit depot. I know Mr. McEwen gave the report, but I just wanted to get some of the facts and figures from our director. And the reason for pressing the pause button. Pause button, thank you.
Move that, see that gets added, thank you. We all right then with approval of agenda with the introduction of new business, we good? Number four, approval of the draft minutes of November 27th, 2024. They're in your package. Trust you've viewed them. Any comments, errors, omissions in those in the minutes of that meeting? I'm not seeing. No, so moved. Thank you. Moved by Councilor Bernard, seconded by Mayor Councilor Yankoff. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes, number 5. Any business from those minutes? Not seeing any hands. Okay, 6 discussions, reports. So we got 6A to F, and we have our manager of finance here and our
Yours is different than mine. Did it change since
Pardon
did that change since it came out? Since the package went out?
Don't think so.
No. It's different than mine.
Yeah, it's different than mine too.
Yeah.
I've got like 3, 3, 1, 4, 4, 1. I don't have, anyways, whatever, as long as they still open up.
Okay, I'm not.
Alright, go ahead.
Okay. So 6A under discussions reports, budget transfer. We got to say 6A to have Manager Lane Pino here. That's going to speak to these, and whatever Lane can't answer, if there's questions, we have our CFO Dan and other staff here. So yeah, Lane, just let you go with 6A and environment and sustainability.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the first item, as mentioned, is environment and sustainability. So part of the process, and as per the budget transfer policy, any funding transfers that are done within the year have to go to the Finance Committee for approval. With the first one being environment and sustainability, there's a total of $65,000 that we're looking for approval to transfer from special projects to support transit operations and shelter maintenance. And these transfers are based on our analysis and the department's analysis of expenditures to date in terms of identifying available funds from other budget lines to transfer.
Okay, sir, any questions to Lane or anyone else on the environment and sustainability transfer request?
Nope.
Okay. Lane on 6B on Public Works.
So again, under Public Works, these are operational budget items. And again, the department reviewed expenditures year to date and identified if there were accounts where surplus funds were identified and compared with other budget lines where, based on year-to-date expenditures, where funding is required, and we move those we're looking to transfer those funds accordingly. So within that department, there's a total of 57,600 that we're looking to transfer.
So, just one question. Leigh, I just wanna go back to the transit operations, it's the 65,000 that you're looking to transfer, correct?
Yes.
And that was for shelving the walkways where the transit stops, not from the sidewalk to the
I
transit bus,
just
I
don't see
assume?
other 6B.
Jessica?
Sorry, say that again?
So the 65,000 that they were looking to transfer for transit,
Yes.
that's for the shelving, right? Shelving, making snow removal for bus stops?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, so it's two separate pieces, two different budget transfer forms. And it's moving money from one transit account to another transit account, so it's all budgeted within transit, just for from one purpose to another. So we did not have budgeted, so the second transfer form is moving 22,000.
No, that's okay,
To
no,
shelter
no, I know
maintenance.
that.
Yeah.
But I thought we had a contract that somebody was cleaning that for us.
Correct, yes, and that's what that money will be used for.
Oh, it's for the contract that we, so would we not have approved that money in the budget when we passed it?
We did not have money for snow removal at bus stops in the budget, ever. In the history of transit.
So then when did this come up? I
Just-
always thought we had a contractor doing that.
No, we just knew.
What's that?
The operator of the transit system is responsible for snow removal in the physical shelter itself. But there's no snow removal happening to get the transit user from the shelter onto the bus, so sometimes they're
But we talked about that last year.
Yes.
And we talked about keeping it clear.
Yes,
And I thought we had a contractor to do that.
this is for hiring the contractor.
Okay.
We got, I
Although we
think,
passed it, we're just getting the money now. The
Yes.
season's just starting. Okay, alright. I get you now.
we had some support from Public Works and a water sewer contractor to help us out last winter.
Okay.
But this is to have our own separate contractor.
Okay. And how many bus shelters are we talking for 65,000?
So this is only 22,000. There's two different transfers that total 65,000, but of that only 22,000 is for bus shelter, snow removal, the second form only.
And transit operations, okay.
Yeah.
So what's the other 40,000 for?
So the 43,000 was for moving money. So right now, the city is paying HST on transit fares, which historically we've received some of that back from the province. We have a letter into the province asking them if they will reimburse us those costs. We did not hear back from them yet. So we need money in our budget to cover HST on fares payments, which was not budgeted for. So in the account noted transit special projects 55250, we have money that we didn't spend. So we want to transfer that over to the account where HST payments are coming from to cover some of those expenses.
Okay. Is there any reason why we wouldn't expect to get that back? Don't we always get the HST back?
If I look back at our records, it looks like there was periods of time where we did. And then I don't know whether it's just that we didn't ask. They weren't forthcoming with those payments. So in September, we issued a letter to the finance minister, which is how it was handled before. And that was, the request was made in the fall and we have not heard back yet.
So is there anybody from the city that would follow up with the government?
I followed up personally a number of times at the staff level, and still don't have a response.
Who's Minister of Finance?
Minister Burridge, Jill Burridge.
Yeah.
Maybe, okay. You may want to reach out. Minister of Finance. Chances are they fall through filter cracks, but anyway. So you're just looking for this 57 now until we get it to these ones.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Okay, so could I ask, Mr. Chair, you've been in the bus service now since 2005, 20 years. It's 2025. So Jessica, every year, they've been responsible for cleaning snow. We had a contract with them. I know in the past, 2008-19, when I arrived here,
The operator, sorry?
yeah, T3
I can't follow an agenda.
Just in the shelter.
Just the shelters.
shelters. And you're telling me that anyone that moved from the shelter to the bus, that was our responsibility? Cities?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So our operator will tell you, they only clear the snow from the shelter itself. They don't clear the sidewalk in front of it, and they don't clear the mounds that are left by the snowplows for the people to get on the bus when it pulls up.
So for the last 6 years, I was thinking that it was Trias,
No.
T3. And I've seen numerous snowbanks, I'm sure you have seen them driving in.
That's why we're putting some
No,
urgency.
but this is every year. They've been piled up. And this is the first year we identified that this is an issue?
That is what I'm saying.
Oh,
I think it's been an issue before,
it has been for 6 years. I've driven these streets and looked at these
yeah, and I think there was a time.
these shelters and saw the amount of snow. And people that were not in wheelchairs, but people that were in, riders that were in walkers or seniors trying to climb over these banks. And I'm thinking, where's T3 on this? But it was our responsibility.
Through you,
Because
Mr. Chair,
They're
so,
only responsible for the shelter.
through you, Mr. Chair, so when I was involved in transit last year,
Yes?
I recognized that this was a significant issue. So we worked with Public Works and a water sewer contractor to do some snow removal last year. And then this year, we established a contract for the winter for snow removal.
Well, why can't we just continue with our own staff doing it? Public Works, Water and Sewer? Or,
A response from Public Works is that they didn't have capacity to do snow removal for transit.
I think it's been an ongoing problem,
it has.
Mr. Mayor, and I think, and I recall trying to get Public Works to do it, when you're clearing sidewalks, so, let me get guys out after that one's cleared. It's not timely, and has been timely. I'm a little surprised to hear that they just had to clear inside the shelter.
How much snow would be inside the shelter?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much.
Because it's a roof over it.
If that's what the contract says. I think it was help the lane to the sidewalk to get to the shelter. So it's been an ongoing problem, and I think that's why we dealt with this, we talked with it last year.
Yeah, that's fair. We're still on 6A.
That way it's done. Now, I will say that I've noticed this year so far, some of the walks that we do, the sidewalk for the crosswalks has been kept open, and I'm assuming that's Public Works staff that's doing that. So it does make sense that they're trying to do all the crosswalks, plus now you want them to do the transit, they probably don't have the staff to do them all the time and fast.
Mr. Chair, if we are promoting ourselves as an accessible city, that is one area that many have noticed has been lacking. I thought it wasn't the city, it was T3. Like when you provide money to clean snow, there's a shelter with a roof on it. There's not much snow getting in there, so I don't know what they were cleaning. My understanding is that they were cleaning the area that would allow people to get on the bus. But for 6 years that I've been here, that has not been the case. Okay, so we will see an improvement in accessibility.
I would say you would, yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I add something?
Sue?
To your, through to you, your worship, from the chair, would there be value in that entering into the conversations with T3 in the revised operating agreement? That for the sake of the continuity of that service, that whoever's cleaning the shelter is also cleaning in front of the shelter where the bus stops. And then we don't have two providers coming in and doing the same site, that maybe that could form part of those negotiations.
That's a good idea.
So, Mr. Chair, so the responsibility inside the shelter, the roof shelter, is T3, correct? And outside the shelter is another contractor.
And I think what the.
No, I know
CEO
what she's saying, I just wanna
Good idea.
clarify.
If they're gonna be there, they might as well do the whole thing.
But I thought that was the reason we were paying them, to do inside, because there wouldn't be much snow inside the shelter.
I would think.
Anyways, let's see if we can
But I
clarify.
think you can get that cleared up, yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway, good discussion, and those 2 points, pretty important, the HST, I just whispered in Terry's ear there, it's been asking, it's around 57K, it'd be good to know where that fits, if it's something we can recoup, that'd be great, and then the snow question, of course, I think there's a solution for that, hopefully. All right, Lane, you were in the middle of Public Works transfer.
Yeah, and as you can see with that transfer, there's numerous accounts identified there for a total of 57,000. We're seeking approval for funding transfers And they're relatively small dollar values ranging from $1,500 to $15,000. But again, the requirement, given that there are some transfers totaling over in excess of $10,000, that's why it's brought forward to the committee.
This is Paul getting things cleaned up in the Public Works Department.
Doing a good job.
Alright,
All good.
great, thank you. And C, 6C, water and sewer is a little higher number in this one, but Lane, do you wanna just speak to that, please? Thank you.
Sure, so these are with respect to capital accounts under water and sewer, or I'm sorry, operating accounts under water and sewer. Totaling $500,000, there's two separate transfer forms there. And I can ask the water and sewer staff to speak to that if there's any questions on those transfers.
Yeah, the only question I would have, Jeff, there's enough money in the capital budget that's been approved to do these projects, right? We're just transferring over. Like, we're not looking for any new money. This is just transfer. I see your Seaview Drive, I see these are the upgrades of the cruise control plant, which we would have budgeted capital dollars for that. So some of these accounts over, and we're taking some money from other accounts that we are under. Correct?
Yeah, I maybe can provide some comments, Chair, if you will, through you to Councillor Bernard. So as we're looking more closely, both from finances lens and the departmental lenses on a lot of the capital projects and some of our spending, we're finding that our processes in terms of approvals of purchase orders and so on don't always involve a check back to budget funds. So in many cases, the expenditures are required and legitimate, but staff haven't taken the step of going back to check to see if that individual budget line has budget remaining. So as we're moving forward and looking closer at these items, we're seeing that there are a number of items that have been approved for expenditure, but we don't have the money in the appropriate budget. So we're trying to improve moving forward. You'll see some more of these in the next meeting and probably the meeting after. And we're going to document and provide some training to staff so that as they undertake projects and approve expenditures, there's a budget check step in there.
The reason I'm curious, I thought, Dan, and this goes back a while ago, but I thought that we had a setup in finance so that when an account was over budget, you couldn't pay it, like it was over budget until you had a budget transfer. So to have these projects completed, well, actually, maybe I'm reading that wrong. Maybe this is the projects that you're taking the money from, that's left over, is it? Like Cedar Drive reconstruction.
7,000.
Okay, so you're moving that into, so the accounts that were over, I would have thought that this would have been done to be able to pay them out.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be, Councillor, and that's the way we want it to be moving forward. There has been,
So it used to set up like that.
Yeah, I know the operational was.
Yeah.
Operational budget was set up that as you got closer to year end, there was a trigger that alerted you to low funds, and that's when we had to start doing budget transfers near the year end. I'm not sure if that was the case in capital though.
but
No, that was my only question. I just wondering why they're all coming down now, but.
yeah, and I think there has been a lapse in terms of procurement process over the years. This isn't new, not something that happened in the last few months, but we've identified the issue and we're trying to improve the process moving forward, but had a good discussion with the manager of finance and the chair of finance this morning in terms of our plan to move forward to put some more control on the budget check process.
And having said that, it's the first time I've met Lane, so. Welcome aboard, Elaine, nice to meet you. And I see another, this must be Nancy?
It is, yes.
Nancy Milligan is our new admin assistant for finance, and
Right on.
she moved upstairs from
Nancy was down on the front desk.
I was.
handling the utility, a lot of the utility work at the front desk, but we're happy to have her. She's keen and
Welcome aboard.
skilled, and
Happy to be here.
I'll move those transfers.
I'll second it. Thank you. Thanks, Lane and Dan. Keep going, so Lane 6D, just the update on RFP, RFQs, where we are.
Yes, Mr. Chair, so the next two items are for information purposes. The first one, with respect to the tenders. So currently, we have 5 open tenders that are all scheduled to close in January. We have one that, to my understanding, is being prepared and will be reviewed by council relatively soon. There's one that's scheduled to go to council later this month. And there's currently 5 with the department that they're currently reviewing.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
So Lane, just on that, when a decision is made by council to approve the tender, we have a window to activate that purchase, correct? So let's say we're buying new buses. There's a window to activate that purchase, correct?
So some of the bids received back through the tender process would have a time frame to them, correct?
Right.
An expiry date, basically.
But the council makes a decision by a vote of whatever the vote is, unanimous to go ahead. That is your trigger to start the process ASAP to make that purchase. Okay, thank you.
And I just want to bring some up, because I know we've had a couple of discussions with this in council, and it was talking about different departments with the tender not coming through finance. And I think, Dan, I think we've talked this a couple of times, where it usually comes through finance to make sure the tender process is done right. And so that is the way we so these ones here that you're describing, it's also been reviewed that the tender's documents been done through the proper process. Like what it used to be, like I know lately we've seen tenders go out through, let's just say, Public Works, and then it goes back under the Public Works budget. And then questions are asked, well, does the process follow properly? And then we would send it here, which I think normally they used to all come here. Finance would make sure the process was done right, then they would move on to council. Is that where we're moving to now?
And just to clarify, so we're talking about the tender award or the actual advertisement of
Well,
competition?
when it goes to council, it usually goes for the tender award, because it's come through here, and they basically, they rubber stamp that it's been done right.
Yes, yeah, so there was some inconsistency in
Yeah.
terms of different departments seem to do it differently. So we are
They have it
trying,
up, then they send it back, and
so we are trying to bring it to finance for approval before it goes, the tender award goes to council. Yes.
And Mr. Chair, so our interim CAO, who was manager of Parks Recreation and also served as interim director with Donna Waddell as interim CAO, she knows the path that departments make recommendations, goes through, as Councilor Howard is saying, goes through Public Works. That's like what with the December 10th resolution that came to council, it came from Environment Sustainability, and that was the tender to purchase, to make the purchase or set in play the building and construction of the public transit depot. So it didn't come through here, so we didn't have that discussion, it was, and I missed that discussion, I was not at the meeting. It's the same with the buses that were passed in November, that came through his committee also, as former chair. That's why the process, I thought the process always was to funnel it through finance, so that we would have a second chance to look at it, and if we had to pause it, we would have that discussion. But this is why I put that on the agenda in our new business, about this process of council make a decision in November to purchase 4 electric buses, council making a decision in December to build a public transit depot. I'm actually backtracking, something that we should have been taking care of at this level right here. And I'm glad that, you know, Lane is hearing the discussion now, so you will have the opportunity to work with the director to make sure that we can channel everything through this as a second sober thought.
But I will add, 'cause I know where you're going with, at least if I'm reading between the lines what I read in the paper. I mean, 'cause you're saying we did pass for the transit construction.
We did.
And now I understand there's some talk that staff is recommending putting a pause on it.
But that was discussed at the last meeting of Environment Standard. That was not under the closed session.
Excuse me, let's deal with this under new business and let's stay with our report here. And Councilor Bernard, I'll cut you off with let's circle back to that.
Yep.
So, Lane, I think we're on 6E, monthly financial update.
Yes, and so this is for information purposes as well. So this is an interim preliminary report based on the month ending November 30th. So it would not include any year-end adjustments or it's basically a report that's run off of the system. But we do run this to identify if there's any red flags from a budgetary standpoint. And if we look at our revenues and expenditures, we're 2/3 of the way through the year right now, and we're coming in about 67% on our revenues. And our expenditures are about 56% as compared to budget, so just advising the committee that we don't see any issues or concerns at this point. And this format is comparable to what we provided to the committee in prior months.
So just question for you, Elaine. Glad to hear that. Because when I look at city revenue and less expenditures and I see funds available and I see in the red, the brackets 11,782,000. What does that actually mean? Because when I read it, it looks like we're 11 million in the red.
That's what I asked at a meeting here.
So so Dan, I might get your assistance.
Okay.
I think
The
it's safe,
accountant's now in to clean her up.
I think it's safe to assume you can disregard that number because it's summarizing the column that
Yeah.
is the difference between what our budget was and what our spending is year to date, or what our budget was for revenue, less our revenue received to date. So it really, it's not a meaningful number. We could probably remove it from
Just when
that.
it's in the red there and it's flashing the brackets, it's like, okay.
Yeah,
This don't look good.
Red indicates a lot.
Great explanation, Andrew. Great explanation.
so I'll
Red doesn't mean red.
I will say that if you look at the total for revenue, it's 25 million in terms of that funds available. So what that means is that we've got 25 million yet to receive on our revenue. And if we go down to our
5 million subtract 11.
now go subtract the 37, so we're 37 million under on our spending. So we're 11 million to the good basically, in terms of what's available for the year.
So, okay.
That formula should have a minus in it, so
Yeah.
it turns out black, not red.
Yeah, it's a net number, so.
I like, Mr. Chair, I like Lane's summation, which is 67% revenue, 56% expenditures. So we're in the green area, which is great.
Those are good ones.
So that's up until the end of November 30th, correct? So at our next meeting, we'll get up until the end of the third quarter, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so again, I'm looking for payment on our capital. Whereabouts is that in the I can't find it, I might be missing it. Where is our expenditures for our capital borrowing? Can you just direct me to that?
Yeah, so
The debt retirement?
No, the debt retirement is what we already owe.
If
Borrow new money.
If I may, Chair, so this is a profit and loss statement,
Yeah.
it doesn't speak at all to debt or where we are on capital projects, so this is an operating budget, so it doesn't speak to our capital projects or our borrowing and financing piece, that isn't part of this report. In terms of our borrowing, we've we've issued some long-term debt during the current year. We have a capital borrowing facility of $10 million, which we're dipping into, and we'll have to go to place some additional long-term debt sometime in the next few months. But exact numbers I don't have for you today.
So, Mr. Chair, we had a lot of discussions in the 24-25 capital budget. And I like to keep track of it. So is it a lot of work in your department, Lane, to provide just a quick summary for the end of the third quarter, where are we at with capital debt, capital borrowing? Because I think those numbers impact this also, impact operation, because I think our Director of Finance during our budget discussions last year said that every million that we borrow, we should put away 10%. So that's 100,000, okay? So I'd like to see, how much have we borrowed, how much have we expended, and what are we paying back? If that's possible, for the end of the third quarter. And I'm not gonna wait, I know we get it at the end of the fourth quarter, when we look at the numbers in a more concrete sense.
I can provide some additional information, Chair, through to your worship. So we, as part of the budget process for this upcoming year, each department has done an update and forecast for their capital expenditures for the current year. So currently, we are on track to spend 69 million in capital. There's some partner funding to come off of that. So I think we had, our budget number for the same period was 85 million in total, so we're at 70 of 85 in terms of what we expected to be. We won't have to finance all of that because we'll be getting some partner funding on that, but that we're 80% of where we expected to be. As opposed to last year, I think this time we were about 30 million on 100 million.
But
Plan.
if this is a snapshot of where we are in the quarter again in November 30th, would it not, under city expenditures, be a line that says how much we're paying towards our capital debt coming out of our operational expenditures?
Yeah, so our interest would be there would be a line in there within the finance and admin budget that would be interest payments.
Would it not be here under city expenses? Because it's an expense?
Yeah, it would, there would be an interest amount in the expenses on the profit and loss statement, yes, there would be.
But for the monthly statement, I think that's what you're asking, right?
Yes,
Whereabouts is that under city expenditures?
it's not isolated out there, it's
I think
included
you told
in
me that
the
before.
finance, yeah.
It's just interest payment is something that you don't document, is that what it is?
Oh, no, it's fully documented, it's just not,
It's not-
it's
it's
not
not
a
here in
single
this-
line item,
Yeah.
we have hundreds of general ledger
It's in
accounts
here.
and.
It's in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a
It's
roll-up.
not a line
It's
item.
not a line item,
Right.
but it's in here.
Right.
Yeah.
This was part of one of the title like finance and audit or city government. Cost would be in, it's being captured obviously.
Within finance and audit, yes.
And just
So
one
it's
last
just taking the
question,
finance and audit line and breaking that out.
so that, Dan, that 85 million for 24-25 is both water, wastewater, and
City.
city, okay. And we're up to 69 million.
Yeah.
To the end of,
Our forecast to the end of March is for 69 million.
oh, that's not the end of November, no,
That's our that's so,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
management has looked at what they've spent year to date
Okay.
and what they expect to spend by the end of this fiscal year. So,
That's the highest in a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
now we have had some big projects, we had Eastern Gateway, big one, finishing off Simmons, that was 18 million, so there's been a couple of big ones that are off the list now, so.
That'd be part of that, which is carryover from years previous, okay.
Just comment, a lot of Councilor Bernard talking to you the other day, and you, one of the questions in the conversation was kind of where we are financially, you getting that on this?
Nope, but I will.
Okay.
Alright, this has to be broken out.
Alright. Okay, is that it on the report? Thank you. Thank you, Elaine. And then, 6F, update on the operational matters of interest, Lane, and then,
Yeah, and through to Mr. Chair, there's just a couple of updates here. This is kind of a catch-all for activity for our department, and there's just a couple of updates on staffing there. Stephen Burke, Senior Finance Officer, has accepted a position in the private sector, and his last day with finance is Friday, so we'll be looking to backfill his role fairly soon. We wish him all the best. He was a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, so we appreciate his contribution, and we're also happy to advise that the second accounts payable clerk position has been filled, and that was Grace Constantine who started this week on January 6th. That's for information purposes as well.
Thank you for that, Lane. Is there any other questions, Lane, on that?
Well,
I'd just like to comment, back up, wanted to welcome Nancy Milligan to the team, or to the admin system.
thank you.
Welcome, and Sue, good having you back,
Great to have Sue back.
Yeah, for your term, and a thank you, I've only been here a short time, but I realize the value Steve Burke provided in our finance department, and he's a great guy, great skill set. It's sorry to lose him, but anyway, hopefully that creates opportunities for either within our own organization or outside. If we have to go outside, so be it, I guess. But anyway, with that said, we will proceed on to the new business
Yes.
items. The first one, I believe, was the update on the 4 electric buses. So who will speak to that?
Just before we do that, Mr. Chair, just to go back to the HST that we pay on our T3 trias. We don't, the 5%, the GST is given back. It's the 10%. So Dan just gave,
5% is what she's talking about, we never got back.
no, we did. We get the 5% back. We don't get the 10.
We don't get the provincial portion.
We know that, but we never got the 5 back.
No, we did.
No, we didn't, that's what she said earlier. That's why we haven't got that check yet.
Yeah, but we do get it back.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so 15% tax,
Yeah.
we get the federal 5% portion.
Yeah.
We do not get the 10% provincial portion.
Have you got the 5% back?
My understanding from finance is we get the 5%.
Have you got it back though?
I can't
Those,
say for sure.
through the chair to Councillor Bernard, so the
I thought that was a conversation we had earlier, that we needed to talk to the minister
Yeah.
with the province.
So, the HST is refunded through CRA corporate-wide, so for all the city, water and sewer, public works, everything. So we file on a regular periodic basis, and sometimes we owe them, sometimes they owe us. So those filings are up to date, and we would be current on our 5% portion that we're due back. The question is on the 10% provincial portion, which we know that we are not entitled to claim an input tax credit through CRA back. We have in past received payment from the province to compensate the city for the 10% that we had to pay CRA. That they in
And that-
turn
that-
turned over
We
to the
normally
province.
would get that, but we haven't got it yet.
We haven't received that in 5 years or more. So there was a payment that happened 2017-18
So was the HST we're talking about on the buses, or is it on
Fares.
the fee,
fares.
the fares?
And that's one minor unfortunate aspect of the relationship that we have with the contractors, because it's an independent business that's collecting the fees and retaining the fares, that they are subject to HST. If it was a municipal department providing or charging the fares, they wouldn't be HST-able, so, or it costs us a little more in that aspect. There's other savings.
So does the contractor get the HST money back himself?
It's completely indifferent to the contractor, because what we pay them, they hand over to CRA. So it's of no benefit or consequence to our
It's a wash.
service provider, it's a wash to them.
Okay.
But T3, Trias, the contractor, when he submits his GST or HST, he gets it all back.
Well,
5%.
That's what I just asked.
Hmm?
It's a wa-
It's what?
I thought you said it was a wash.
What a wash is that they, as a company, as a private corporation, when they submit their HST paid out, they'll get the 15% back. We don't, we're a municipality. We only get the 5% back, which is the GST. The GST off the HST. You get that?
Right.
Okay. But the reason I bring that up, In 2021, remaining HST that we had to pay was $163,884. As numbers go up in the fares, for 23-24, it was $378,575 that we paid to the province for the provincial portion of the HST, correct? We get a grant of $475,000, right? But that grant was not for the HST. That grant was just to subsidize, help the bus system or the transit system in Charlottetown, correct?
That's the meeting I had with the minister, yep.
Yeah. So we have to ask the province, that HST, the full HST should be coming back to the city if we're gonna make this system work. And I think we have, this letter, I believe, was sent out by the three, Kevin Cody, Richard McEwen, Jeremy Crosby, for the Capital Area Transit Commission, correct?
What date is that?
September 12th. So I think that has to be part of our revenue sharing discussions with the province. That's why I wanted to bring that up.
Why should it be part of the revenue share? Why can't, if they're to give it back for the transit system, why wouldn't they just give it back?
Tell that to Jill Burridge.
But
Tell
who's
that
talking to her though? This is what I find,
We-
nobody's
we-
talking to the
We've
province.
been trying. I've reached out 3 times to the Mayor of Municipal Affairs, Housing and Land Use to sit down with the city of Summerside and the city of Charlottetown to discuss the revenue sharing, not only the property taxes, but issues like this, EMO, and other issues that are outstanding that the city is carrying, and we are getting taxed to the limit. Now, thank goodness Lane gave us a good report on our finances, but you know what? That's gonna wear thin as we go forward.
So you don't have an intergovernmental affairs committee set up, do you?
We do. But
So-
we were trying to set this up through, from the urban mayors meeting that we had in Stratford. We discussed about meeting, let the bureaucrats do what they have to do, which they've done. And if that didn't work, we were gonna meet with the province, the office of the mayor, office of Jill Burridge, and the office of Minister Steve Myers. I have phoned, we're gonna be sending another letter, can we meet? We have to meet to discuss this issue and other issues that relate to property tax revenue sharing. We're not getting our fair share. They're keeping, under the old agreement, 270-22, they are keeping almost 40%, correct? 40 cents in every dollar. Like, we can't keep operating unless we start raising taxes. And I don't want to be raising taxes. I don't think any of us want to.
But your worship, through the chair, there is a letter, I've seen a letter drafted that hopefully will move it to next steps.
Yes.
From yourself and the other mayor.
And I've made 4 calls to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, no response.
And this is exclusively on the HST piece.
No, it's on HST and property tax,
Share.
The section front, so it's lumped in with that.
yeah, that's right. Because we're paying the fare. We're paying the HST on this, and we should be getting that HST, the full 15%, not 5%, full 15%. And not as a grant, but as a, just like the
It was
GST.
never, when I met with the minister, it was never as a grant, it was to improve the transit infrastructure. It was to be able to get more routes, grow the transit system, that was the idea. And it was on top of the grant that they were already giving us, that hadn't increased for a number of years, I think it was 110,000. So it was
180.
whatever, but it was a 474 on top of that. And I think some of that went to Stratford, Cornwall, we ended up with 425 maybe.
Right.
To Charlottetown. So,
If I may, Chair, I would just like to give some credit to our environment and sustainability folks. Both the issues, some of these big issues like the HST on fares, the access for snow removal at the depots. These are all issues that are being raised by our environment and sustainability staff that hadn't been done before because we didn't have staff and capacity to look at them. We're providing a major service here and now we are getting some resources to do that, so just kudos to those people that are working hard to dig in, because we've been in the business for a number of years, but we're really just getting some resources to try to manage it, so.
but and on that, I wouldn't mind, what the CAO said was basically, if we had a contract for them to clean out the shelters, it must have been misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because if the shelters have a roof over them, there's not much snow in it, so we would have assumed that would have been clearing away.
That's right.
So I like the idea, what she's saying is if they're gonna clear it inside the shelter, you're there, clear the pathway
Yeah.
through to the sidewalk.
And there are,
That makes a lot of sense to me.
and on that, there are a number of issues of concern, both from the contractor's perspective and the city's perspective. And Jessica's team is in throes of discussions about renegotiating some of the terms of the contract moving forward.
Yeah, so just one of that contract that we talked about, and as Sue said, it's a third person now, maybe that should be put on hold until you talk to T3, because if they're already looking after this, inside the shelter, they probably should be looking after. As opposed to them going to do the shelter, and somebody else comes to do the walkway, and somebody else.
We might be missing a piece here.
Well, so through you, Mr. Chair, we've had the conversations multiple times with the operator.
Yeah.
And my understanding is they're not really interested in doing the whole snow removal process with beyond the shelter. They literally are, and again, this is like through a process of now diving into what's happening and realizing what is or isn't happening. They're sending a person out like with a shovel and shoveling out the snow that drifts into the shelters. And that's what they understand to be their role. They don't have trucks with snow plows or machinery to do snow removal on our behalf. Maybe they're interested in doing that and making that investment and being that provider. But what they've told us is they didn't have the capacity to do that and wouldn't, bid on it or be paid for that service. So that's why we then had to go to a contractor who has the proper equipment and the ability to do that. So there's two options. We remove shelter maintenance from them completely and they don't go there at all and it's all contracted out, or we increase public works resources and it's a staff function. There's different ways you can slice it, but we did have the conversation. They're not able to provide that snow removal service. So that's why we went up for an RFP.
So I think it would be best to have one person look after it all, or Public Works have crews hired, that's what they look after.
Yeah, I mean, it's a much broader discussion. You have snowplow removers removing snow by hydrants, you have public works staff removing sidewalk snow, you have shelter crews from T3, and you have now a transit contractor all going to the same area. So
Well, really, the buses basically pulls up the side of the road to the sidewalk. So you don't run into a lot of it.
Yes, you do. Go down to University Avenue, the shelter there, they're going over a bank, and I received emails and calls.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's up to the T3, and I'd phone Mike and say, Mike, you guys have to clean it up. Yeah. I guess they were just cleaning the inside.
But what about where there's no shelters, where they stop? Because most of their stops are not with shelters.
right,
And
So what are you
they're
doing
not
there?
responsible for that, are they?
no, that's the purpose of this. So now this snow removal contract will clear a spot for people to stand at bus stops.
All stops.
Well, our plan is to work through the $22,000 and see what type of winter we have. I can't predict what the winter will hold, but we might burn through some of that money quickly, and if so, we can come back to council and ask for additional funds.
But I think what he's asking though, what you're saying is that's just where the shelters are?
Yeah.
Or is that every stop?
No, so what we're contracting out now is bus stops, even if they don't have a shelter.
Okay.
But we're prioritizing the main routes, not
Right.
the quieter routes.
Okay, so can we look at, if that's the case, the quieter routes, is that something that Public Works can look after?
I
I
can't
know
speak to that, yeah.
there's days like today where there's no snow plowing going on.
Yeah, maybe,
Excuse
We
me,
lost our Public
just
Works
before I go to you, Councillor Jankov, Richard, you have any comments on the snow piece? You're listening, you got anything?
Well, it is to the timeliness of it. I mean, you want those bus stops available as soon as possible, so that's why we are looking at an alternate contractor. And we use contractors to do snow removal in many aspects within the city's operations. So we need more forces, and this is hiring a contractor who would be in that area and take care of this specific need for us.
Yeah, cause to me, it would either speak of, if we don't do it, and we talk about the operator potentially doing it, well, I get the operator doesn't have that gear, but he either then, if it's his responsibility, then he's getting he's asking for his own tender to do that sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah, so in a new contract, to Sue's point, that's what we'd look at, right? You're gonna operate the system and your bus drivers are gonna be driving by a spot and notice, hey, this one needs snow removal. they're gonna send in whoever they have to look after snow removal, if that's where we land with the negotiation and the contract, but I mean, I think that's a good course of action, and I too was surprised that our contractor wasn't responsible for snow removal outside the shelter.
Okay, let's leave that, it's getting to be pretty operational stuff and, yeah, pardon me?
Deputy has a question.
Oh, excuse me, yes.
Yeah, just listening to this discussion on these operations, and I think that, you know, whatever happens operationally, I think that we need some consistency on messaging. If T3 is doing some, Public Works is doing some, they drive by with their snow plow, little sidewalk plows, some things get covered, some are contractors. Whatever's gonna happen, we just need some continuity and some consistency, because right now, when a resident calls a counselor, who are we directing it to? The mayor just got through saying, well, does T3 do it? So that's the only part I hear from this conversation, is that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, and hopefully we can get together and figure that out, so we don't have these discussions going forward.
Yeah.
That's my point.
And Mr. Chair, at our environment and sustainability meeting in December, Anna said there's almost 120 stops in the city, or more, bus stops. So we got 22,000 set aside for cleaning 120 spots, or that contractor's gonna pick and choose?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're focusing on the major routes, so 1, 2, 3.
So 60 stops?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but yeah.
Can you send that to us?
Sure.
Okay, let's move on.
I'm just gonna make a comment, I hear it operational, I've heard it for the last few years, operational, don't ask your stone, that's all. Everything the city does is operational. But everything the city, every policy that we pass is where it then jumps into operational. So if there's operational issues that are causing the problem, it's a policy that takes to fix that. So we're gonna ask questions on operational, it's gonna happen. Because it's our job to get, if there's a problem, it's our job to get it straightened out. So there's gonna be lots of operational questions being asked.
Well,
Can I just
it's probably a
make a point
balance
to
there.
that, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair?
yeah, go ahead.
Through to you, Councillor Bernard, you're absolutely right, and we've already talked about this just since I came 2 days ago. That it's oftentimes the elected members that are hearing the concerns, to the deputy's point. What is, I think, being suggested here is that once it comes forward as a concern, whether it's through you or another elected member, then it's up to the staff to address whatever that is, and then report back on how it's been managed.
Yeah.
But I guess the only point I think here is that this has been identified as an issue. The department head responsible is going to follow up on it.
Yeah.
And then she will circle back and let this committee and the rest of council know how this has been addressed.
Yep.
So that should be the loop.
Perfect.
But I guess we just don't wanna get mired in how we solve the problems at this table. It's just making sure that the
They're
issues are
identified.
being identified as necessary, and then leave it with us to solve, and then you can come back if it's not solved,
Yep.
but
Yeah, that's your reason to bring it up,
the-
there's a
that's
number
the
of like-
intent.
Yeah.
yeah,
Perfect.
okay.
Okay, great, thanks, good point, Sue, thanks for rescuing that. Can we do the update, the 4 electric buses?
Could I just follow up on that quickly? It goes back to the minutes, and it was for 4 battery electric buses in the amount of $6,346,000. So that decision was made on November 12th. Have we issued a purchase order? Well, but see, okay, so a decision was made by council. You asked us to make a decision in the chamber to go ahead and purchase these buses. And then at our December meeting for environment sustainability, we find out we're gonna pause the construction of the public transit depot. And I go back to the minutes from that meeting. The current submissions for the design build RFP will expire after the next council meeting on December 10th. Should one not be awarded, the RFP will not be restarted. So that was in the minutes from our meeting.
Of course.
So, guys, the decision was made to purchase the buses. And here we are, January 8th, and no purchase order has been issued. And we had 3 contractors that put bids, well, actually 4, right? And we reduced it down to 3. Now, similar to the first one, because this is the second time we did this tender. we gave each contractor $10,000. Did we give the contractors in the final three $10,000 for the second round? Yes or no?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. That
But-
that went to council for approval.
For the second round?
Yeah.
Yes.
And when was that resolution passed?
I can't remember off the top of my
Okay.
head, but I know.
We had a discussion on it,
Yeah. So here we are.
and there was a mistake made in the first one,
Yes.
so they had to cancel it out and
Right.
go to the second one.
So we spent $60,000 in providing monies to the contractors. We get a bid, and at our last meeting of environment sustainability, Mr. McEwen provided the financial reasons. So can I find out why didn't we order the buses after the decision was made by council? Mr. Chair, can I ask you? And can we find, or maybe the purchase order has been issued?
Do you want me to speak to that?
Or me or Dan. And I don't mind it either way.
I'm happy to give you my input. I didn't have the opportunity to present the information that I had gathered in terms of the implications for the cost overruns on both the buses and the depot in terms of what we had budgeted and what the tender amount came in at. I had flagged some concerns with respect to the long-term sustainability and the impacts of the electrification piece on our tax rate. So with in consultation with the infrastructure secretariat at the province, environment and sustainability staff have tried to have a second look at reconsidering the piece of electrification. The city's obviously committed to transit, but we want council to have the best information possible in terms of the financial implications of the decision to move from perhaps clean diesel renewal of the fleet from diesel electric buses or from battery electric buses, because the cost differential is quite substantial. It is well in excess of what we had budgeted for originally, and although council approved those expenditures, I don't think council really had the benefit of the full picture in terms of what over the next 5-10 years the financial implications would be. We looked at the 4 buses in isolation, and we looked at the transit shed in isolation, but there's also another 17 buses to be replaced, I think. Is that rough numbers in terms of beyond these 4? 13 or 17?
Seventy's in the fleet, I think it's 13.
And
18 fleet.
Full size.
And the cost differential between the diesel electric bus and the clean diesel bus and the battery electric bus, it's essentially 100% more to buy the electric bus. So it's not so bad when you're just looking at 4, but if you're looking at 17, and we're building 17 more in addition to that, and we're building a depot to house these battery electric buses, on top of some uneasiness about the electrification question in terms of the technology and where we are with electrification and supply of buses and so on, we want to provide council with a thorough evaluation of that decision, reconsideration, so that you have a full picture of what the implications are, not just this year, but for the next 5-10 years. And I think if I did listen in on the meeting where Director McEwen responded to the questions, and I do believe strongly that if we didn't provide council with this information at this time, and someone looked back in 18 months, someone would be sure to say, why the heck didn't you point this out to us at the time before we ordered the equipment and signed the contract? So while the direction was given to issue purchase orders for the buses, we still don't have a contract. We only received the contract on the buses from the supplier the latter part of December. So there's contract negotiations that have to be worked out. There was questions about the deposit, whether the contractor wanted us to, the payment terms were payment on delivery of the buses. One of the changes that the supplier is looking for is that they want a deposit upfront. So that's a change. So there are details even even assuming we're moving down the road, there are details that need to be worked out in terms of actually issuing a purchase order and signing a contract, so although the direction was there from council, we want you to have the full picture and benefit of what the consequences are longer term.
Excuse me, just, I was going to you, Richard, so.
Yeah, no, I wanna-
And I'd like for Richard to chime in before we go to questions to Terry, and then Councillor Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. So what I will add to it as well, when we brought forward the depot to council, we recognized that the city's portion of funding had increased to being 50%. And at the time, I did not understand, and we have since understood that it may be possible for that funding to be moved away from the depot. And if that's possible, it really would help with our transit system. So when we went back to the infrastructure secretariat here at the provincial level, they were supportive of us looking at reallocating those funds in another way to help transit. And the request now is with the federal government to see if they would allow us to do that. And if we're allowed to do that, we get back to the situation where the city is covering about 25% of costs instead of 50% of costs to support our transit. And all of this work is to support public transit, and the benefit of public transit is having people out of their vehicles and into a bus. Whether the bus is powered by diesel or a battery, the key is us supporting public transit, and that's where we see the environmental benefit and the social benefit within our city. So I was very thankful for Dan pushing me on the financial aspects to it, because I really felt, all right, this service is so important to us, we need to find that extra $5 million for the depot. But it's not just $5 million for the depot, it's twice as much money for every bus down the road, and it is a significant cost to the city.
Yeah.
And we're hopeful that the federal government will allow us to reallocate those funds to continue to support public transit. And there is a handful of municipalities across the country who are all revisiting the electrification question because of the cost associated with it, but recognizing the great benefit to your community in having public transit.
So,
Thank you very much, Jessica.
excuse me, okay, sorry, excuse me, Terry, I'll just go to Jessica and then.
Yeah, really quickly through the chair, just to add, that speaks to one of Mayor Brown's questions, which is the validity of the proposals. So in the RFPs, it says, that they expire at this date unless the proponent agrees to extend it. So both the bus supplier and the design build proponent that were endorsed by council have been asked to extend their submissions until budget is complete.
Well, obviously, there's been some information here I never heard before, I guess it's maybe come through environment.
December 19th in the open portion of the meeting, so
So-
there's nothing closed.
Okay, so I'm just trying to go back, I thought it had more to do with the buses, but anyway,
Well, it does, because we passed a resolution in November. That's why I asked our manager of finance, when a
So-
resolution is passed by council, that triggers going to a purchase order.
so
And
whenever
that was
we,
back in November.
whenever we talked about this before, and when I was in council chambers, and I think you were looking for a little over $5 million more that we were short because of increased costs. And at that point, it was shown that the city was up to 49% of the total cost. It broke down where, when this first started, we were around 28, 30%. So we got approval for a certain amount of dollars like 2 years ago. Haven't started yet. I think I asked Daniel a couple of times, and Jessica, if we can renegotiate the contract, because we haven't started anything, we have no hole in the ground. Did that happen? I'm kind of assuming that did happen, and they said, yes, you can renegotiate. Is that correct? And that's why,
Through the chair to Councillor Bernard, so we did go back to talk to the province about renegotiating the agreement. What they come back with was, because the ISIP fund is dry, there's no money in the pot left, everything's been allocated, we can't reconsider your project in terms of upping the funding for the project overall. What they did say is that we would entertain a proposal from you to shift the money that is in our bucket for Charlottetown Transit away from the depot and investing that in additional fleet renewal. So they've said we would consider, right now we have an overall project, but there are a couple of components of that. One was some additional diesel buses early on, the depot expansion and new buses. So what they've said, and the province has had some experience and some recent challenges with the electrification question as well. So I think that perhaps has provided some motivation for them to be supportive. But I think they demonstrated that they were certainly wide open to proposal from the city to move some of the budget in that overall project away from bricks and mortar and into rolling stock which would really
Yeah,
be
but- okay.
supportive
I
of
got
transit.
two questions now, because once you do that, there's still no new money. I guess my
That's right.
concern as elected official would be, we're up to 50% now, and we haven't dug a hole yet.
The big,
It's gonna be cost overruns, so we're gonna be going up to 70%, which we will not be able to afford to run a transit system at that cost. So I was assuming when I read it the paper, and I was trying to read between the lines with what the editor is writing from the meeting that he's listened to. I was hopeful that there was gonna be an opportunity to reapply, but like you say, the money's, so there's no restocking for 2025 or 2026.
Yeah.
So if you're saying that they're agreeable to take some money from the bricks and mortar, I think that project was around 12.5, 13 million.
15.
Put that towards electrification. What's the good of that if you don't have the building to electrify the buses?
So the move under what information that will come back to council for consideration, I believe, is that the move would be not towards electrification in the near term, so in the next 5 years, but it would be to defer on the electrification question, invest the money that the city and the province and the feds would be contributing to transit overall, more into renewing the fleet with clean diesel versus battery electric buses. So not going the electrification route right away, but deferring on that down the road and so we would move away from a 49% cost share back to a 26.67% cost share.
And how would you do that then? How would it go back to 26%? By buying cheaper buses?
The magic is that we're spending a lot less on each bus and we're not spending 15 million on a transit depot.
So, Mr. Chair, like, clean diesel, that's like clean coal. That's what the Americans now use, clean diesel. Diesel is diesel. So, and we talked about the province and their experience with.
Line.
Yeah, Lion. Lion's now in chapter 11, out of St. Jerome, Quebec. So, and I looked into it because I was pressuring Mr. Caston, buy some of these Lion buses, because at the FCM in Quebec City in 2019, they were out on the floor selling these buses like they were candy. Anyways, we found out they weren't working. So I go back to the November 25th meeting of our Environment Sustainability. Jessica stated the following, and I think this question came from Councillor, no, it wasn't Councillor Twill, but you were the chair, Mr. Councillor Bernard. The contract with ISIP states that the municipality is responsible for any project overages. Therefore, it is unlikely that they would come through with additional funding to cover any inflation. However, this request will be made if the project is approved. The difference between the original ISIP funding and Wellington's construction bid is approximately $5 million. So you made the request, and we're waiting for the response. On the building or on the buses? Going through the chair to our manager of environment sustainability. Jessica?
We did make that request.
Right.
We were told, as Dan mentioned, the pot is dry. We are not able to top up those funds any further. You can look to adjust your scope or redesign your project, but we cannot give you any more money.
So just, we got a window with Wellington Construction. So if we go longer, they'll just say, bid's done, you have to start over again. So pressing the pause button means that the tender could go away, they'll just say, we're walking away. Do we have a plan B for that? Through the chair, to the manager, or to the director? Do we have a plan B?
So Richard has his hand raised.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. You can answer or I will if you
Oh,
want.
go ahead.
Well, we met with the contractor to
Yes.
advise them that we are reviewing this project through our city council budgeting process. And as we work through the budgeting process, we'll be able to give them more information. At this time, they are aware that the project may not go forward.
So,
Excuse me, that's Wellington?
well, yeah. So, Richard, we're Director of Community Services. You're coming from Manager of Water and Wastewater. These discussions have been going on for several years. Like, the money's been there. And we finally get to a point where we got a contractor. Wellington Construction, and now we're gonna tell them, can't do it. We passed a resolution in that chamber at the November regular monthly meeting to purchase 4 buses. We don't purchase the buses. Like, guys, I don't know what our purpose is. Sitting around this table or sitting in that chamber. I really feel that our political decision was made. And then there was other works going on behind the scene. And we do have a climate action plan. And Richard knows, and so does Jessica know. In that climate action plan, it talks about going to electrification of our public transit. So let's wipe that out. Or put 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
thank you, Mayor Brown. And
frustration.
you're loud and clear on, I guess, your concern and your point and basically probably what direction you wanna go in, but, it seems to me that, there's been new information here. This is a big file, this is a big project. There's a lot of fluidity and, within the space, within the technology, and funding pieces and who's paying what. So if having said all that, it's given rise to this second
Sober thought.
sober thought on the thing, and I would rather have that discussion now than get into a major infrastructure project, and we know how some of those things can go after the fact. So. And yes, it doesn't escape me that if you put something like this in Hull, it's gonna cost more money, cause it's not gonna be cheaper. I get that. So, that's just my general comments. Richard, you had your hand up, go ahead.
And Dan as well, but I think it's important I wanted to bring this forward, and I mean, really, again, this is Dan's very good work to make sure that we provide council with very good information and the financial implications. And Dan can speak to what the tax implications could be for this. But when I saw the numbers and then the opportunity to continue to support transit within our financial capabilities without having to raise taxes, and
I say that
again,
all the time, Richard.
This
You
is
say that all the
this is a decision for council, and all we can do is provide you with the information. But I wanted to make sure that you had this financial information and the implications. And the decision is yours, and we would all welcome the opportunity to see a fully electric transit fleet out there, but it's important for council to understand the cost implications.
Discussing for 6 years,
And
6 years.
I have to say,
And I wanna add one more thing, even this altered plan that you will see still has us looking at electrification. It's on our smaller buses that we can do at a lower cost, but still recognizing that the future is an electric transit system, but at a time when hopefully prices have come down and
Prices are coming down in buses?
that would be the hope.
Okay.
that's usually the way, it usually takes time.
I did want,
I'm just a little
if I may,
surprised.
if I may just respond, I understand your frustration, your worship.
Frustration because this has been 6 years.
Yeah.
6 years we've been going on with this
And-
about electrification. Money's been in the bank. And now we come to a point.
Okay, excuse
that
me,
we
Mayor,
can't-
go
we
ahead,
can't-
Dan, finish.
We can't purchase them.
No,
And we pass a resolution and ignore it.
I understand your frustration, and it's
Yeah.
been frustrating for staff. Anna and Jessica have been working hard on this, along with the procurement team. There's been a lot of hours invested in it. But that has gone on for a long time. But what is recent is we've only just in November and December found out what either of those items are gonna cost. So that information is all new.
No, we knew the buses were over $1 million. We knew it was going up because Nova was down. We did a tour with Nova, and I think you were there, Jessica. We did a tour with Nova. They said, guys, the longer you wait, the higher the price goes.
So we now know that the buses are $1.8 million each.
Well, the last week was 1.6, so it's up 1.8 now.
1.756, and we didn't know anything about the transit depot, other than we had a budget of 10 and it turned out to be 15. So that information is all really fresh, and I understand, and I, you know, but we really feel the obligation to let you have the information, and ultimately it's your decision to make, but we do feel an obligation, and really, we would be shirking our responsibilities if we
And I
didn't.
think that obligation was there over the last 6 years. It's coming now to, we actually passed 2 resolutions, one for the buses, one for the depot, and both are on pause.
I think,
Excuse me, go ahead, Terry.
I think, your worship, what it comes down to is, we had costs that we expected. We had money coming that we expected.
Yeah.
We have an agreement for funding 2 years ago. Every time something goes up, there's no more money for us from any level of government, it's on us. Now that it's gone up, that we're at 50%, now it starts to question, and now it's at 50%, now the buses are going up in cost, and everything's going up. So the question becomes, what percentage can the city afford at the end of the day? We all want electrification. Nobody more probably myself and the manager here. I mean, we all are striving to go there. But there has to be a balance. And if what I'm hearing from, you know, okay, now buses are 1.8, well, when I was on the chair of the committee, they were 1.1, 1.2, and we had the agreement with the government, with the funding, they were 1.1 million. So if they're up to 1.8, but we're not getting another dime, that's why I'm surprised the government is telling you there's no more money. Like this electrification is gonna go on for years, and I would be very surprised the government doesn't set up another program to help municipalities towards electrification.
Yeah, and to that point, you know, Jessica believes, and I think it's reasonable to expect that in the future, the federal government will come with more infrastructure programs that more provide better support for
Right,
electrification.
and I think right now we need that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, just to sum up, again, Jessica been at the table, look, I appreciate, but now the financial part of it is catching up to us. That should have been part of the whole process. Is that fall on Jessica? No, that is a collective decision of us.
Yep.
And as Councillor Twill, or Councillor Bernard said, these issues should be always coming back to finance. This is the kind of discussions we need to have. So, September 10th, we hired Colliers to do the RFP, well, to do the design build of the transit depot at 200,000. So we're gonna, if this contract folds, Richard, with Wellington, this folds too. So there will be a penalty for that too. Someone will have to pay. That will be us. Now, Colliers will say, listen, we had work that was already scheduled. You signed a contract. We signed a contract. So there's gonna be costs there. We also, Mr. Chair, did an inspection on 5 and 7 Mount Everett Road. We had Coles Associates spend, I think, about $30,000 to do an inspection on the building as part of this project. These are all the steps that were taken prior to this December 19th meeting. Nope, I put it on hold. Financial implications are too high. I don't think we can meet it. We'll have to raise taxes, always raise taxes.
I think, and I agree with you, we've done all those steps, but I think, Mr. Mayor, if there's new information that we need to hear, then I wanna hear it. And if it's gonna be impacting on our finance moving forward, we're not aware of it, then I think it's prudent to bring that forward and let us review the whole, over the next 5 years. I do think, to me, when I seen the figure of us up to 49% cost and we haven't dug a hole yet, you know that's gonna be 70% by the time it's done.
Easy.
And so when you move out those numbers, we can't afford it. There's $2 million per bus now. So I would rather know now than be underwater and find out.
Councillor McAleer, look, we will know. We started out with Simmons Arena at 18 million. The final bill, 36. We couldn't stop building it.
It wasn't 18 million,
It was. I remember the numbers we were floating around.
23.
But here we are. Yeah, that was with the federal and the provincial contribution, but our contribution was 18. My point is, Mr. Chair, is that I think Wellington will have to be told, we're not going ahead. Colliers will have to be told, we'll have to move on. Well, by the sounds of it, I don't think it's gonna be a pause button. I think it's
I
stop.
think just for the purposes of wrapping up this discussion, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
if we could do that.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, we've elevated the temperature because this was information not known by members at the table. So I think it's a matter of a little bit of catch up right now, take a deep breath. We need to make sure that all of the facts that both directors have presented are presented to you as far as, these are the mitigating factors that caused us to hit the pause button. These are what we're recommending for next steps. It may be putting a pause on, well, it will put a pause on contracts that have already been awarded. Doesn't mean they're done and dusted, it just means we've done a pause until council gets a chance to review the new information that our finance people have, and determine how we move forward. I think it's all agreed that we will be doing electrification as we go through time, it's just when and how that happens, and if we have the funds in place to execute it at each of those stages. It doesn't appear as though right now, your worship, we can go full throttle on this, without the necessary funds in place, so that's the pause button. But it doesn't mean we're throwing the whole thing
That's right.
out the door, it just means
The backwater's not gone
we've
yet.
got new information that is yet to be shared with council, and it's going to impact the resolutions that you've already approved.
Yeah,
So
and
that's where we are.
yeah, thanks, and I'm gonna conclude this with this comment, and if there's, you got your hand up?
I did for a while,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, I'd just like to, my concluding comment is we have, Trevor McKinnon, the new chair of Environment Sustainability, has arranged for Mike Cassidy to come in. He's an important player in this thing, obviously, so it'll be good to, have a session and listen to his piece as well. I think that's gonna be certainly gonna be helpful and timely. And certainly recognized, I don't think anybody wished we were gonna be here, but realizing that over the last week, 10 days, that realized that this kind of thing was gonna be where we are.
Yeah.
It's
Things happen.
yeah,
Things
so anyway, Councillor Yankoff, and
So, there were quite a few things have come up that most of you have covered. But just to summarize what I would expect as a committee member and as an elected official, when this does come back to council for reconsideration of resolutions already passed, climate action plan that's already been passed, money for contractors to, $60,000 of money we spent for contractors to put bids together. I think that when this comes to council, I would be asking for all of the transparency around what the financial implication of what we've already spent and mistakes made or errors made or more information, new information, because council needs to know and taxpayers need to know what we've spent on what we're not actually gonna do anymore. That's just my 2 cents worth, so thank you.
I don't think they're not gonna do it anymore. I think it's a pause to see where we are and how we progress, how we move to the next few steps. Do we move as fast as we're going? And I think the affordability is what I think why we brought this. For me, my thought is, we need to have another federal provincial funding program. Well, you know what, I'd be surprised if it doesn't happen, it's the future. It's the way we're
Well,
going.
yeah,
I'd be very surprised if it doesn't happen.
scary thing with that is you don't know what, if it's a Poilievre government, who knows?
Or Trudeau.
Anyway, is that enough for beating that up?
Yeah, I gotta go. I gotta get back to the-
Motion to adjourn? Moved. Seconder? All right, thank you.